Hey, it's Michael Porcelli here, founder of MetaRelating, and I'm here with my really good friend, Jana. Hey, Jana.
Hey.
And Jana and I met a few years ago, kind of at a key moment in the life of MetaRelating, where the latest version was basically happening. And Jana played a key role in that moment in our relationship. And yeah, like I've gotten a lot from her, and I've been able to share a lot of what meta relating is with her. And I thought, who better of a person to sit down and have a conversation with me about the origin story, the kind of sources that kind of come from my life in terms of where meta relating came from. So here we are.
We did it.
We did it.
And all the nerding out that we've done about MetaRelating, Michael Porcelli.
Uh-huh.
And when you asked me if I was interested in having this conversation with you, I realized I know little bits of the story of how MetaRelating came to life, but I've never heard the full story. So I'm really looking forward to this today.
Right on. I'm glad you said yes.
So you're gonna tell us how all this started?
Well, first I was born. No, just kidding. I mean, but it does go back quite a bit. Like, I mean, I can think of myself as a young man, even a teenager, feeling a lot of frustration and confusing, particularly about relationships with women, intimate relationships. And people would say to me things like, oh, you just got to be confident and just be yourself and let it happen. And this was just totally did not make any sense because, like, myself did not feel confident, and I didn't know how to let something happen. I just didn't even know how it happened. Right. So so it was just kind of like the kind of advice that I really couldn't do anything with.
Mm.
It was, that's
Mhm.
sort of where it started. So it needed something more practical and actionable, in order to finally figure that out. And that's a, you know,
You were one of those hyper smart, really analytical, nerdy kids, weren't you?
yes, yes, math and science and spending a lot of time up in my mind, thoughts, brainy sort of, life.
I really hope
Books.
right here you enter a picture of you because I've seen a picture of young Porch and it is,
Oh my gosh.
oh, so fabulous.
Maybe I'll dig one up. Let's
Please
see.
do. I like that everyone must have a picture in their mind of this one.
Funny. Yeah. Well, it followed me, into work. So I went to engineering school, and then I got some early internships as an engineer. And then the first part of my career was as an engineer. And, I, there's like almost like a culture of engineering school, which is like, you got to know what you're doing and you got to act like you really know the answers. And even to the point where it's like, even when I didn't know the answers, I would try to pretend like I knew and then figure it out, hoping nobody would notice that I had to figure it out. And maybe I pulled
Mhm.
that off sometimes. And I think at other times I didn't, and they noticed, and that was fine. Um, and then whenever I would get into a situation where, like, there's a problem we were trying to solve, and I would offer what my solution was, and maybe somebody else had a different idea, and I just thought, well, they're not agreeing with me, so that just means they don't understand. So what I need to do is to explain it again,
Uh-huh.
like maybe with more details or like more logic or something, right? So,
Uh-huh.
and then if they kept like not agreeing, then I would just be like, I guess I give up, right? Like it never occurred to me. Maybe they had a different idea, a better idea, or maybe it didn't even occur to me in those kind of conversations that I could be like interested in where they were coming from or what they were trying to say.
Yeah.
Like it was, and so I think I was kind of a little bit of a jerk in this way. Like, I mean, it was kind of oblivious, but I just didn't.
Yeah.
I was just like, all I know how to do is explain myself again, right? Like it was
Mhm.
kind of kind of funny looking back at that.
Yeah, and I imagine you were super passionate about your topic. If I know you now, you have a little kick with your with your passion. So might have been a very
Yep.
interesting package.
Yep. Totally. There was this one time where one colleague was asking me to explain something to him, and I like explaining things, but before I even got started, he paused me and he said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah. Why do you ask?" And he's like, "Well, you just kind of sighed, and you seem like maybe you're frustrated or feeling impatient or something." And I was like, "Really? I don't feel that way." But I also didn't realize I had sighed either. He sort of pointed out something that I was not aware of, that I was kind of signaling
Uh-huh.
or something, and I felt a little bit defensive. Nothing really kind of came out of that conversation, but it did sort of plant a seed for the future. Like I didn't really realize until much later that I was really leaking out in a way,
Yeah,
like
like people
these
were reading
emotional,
the signals of what and you didn't have an awareness of some of those
and
signals.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. Is I didn't know how I was feeling,
Uh-huh.
which was which was kind of funny in retrospect, but a little bit embarrassing, but yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And
like social, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, let's talk a little bit because I have heard some of the stories around your early social life.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, if it was like just like a hanging out, friends or social event or like a party or something, I just had like one thing that I knew how to do or thought I was supposed to be doing, which was like, I got to be interesting. I got to be the smart guy. I got to have something, a well articulated point of view or opinion or the news or something. I got to be informative, and that's sort of what I wanted to do while making conversation. And I think I think I was interesting some of the time. I think some of the time I was probably like just talking too much, and I wasn't interested in other people. I just didn't know that I wasn't doing that. I was just kind of oblivious, and
Uh-huh.
it kind of took I was sort of this mode, right? And then I started to notice like other people sort of seemed like they were in that mode too, right? The person who's just trying to be kind of interesting all the time, and it'd be like kind of cool for a while, and then it would be, yeah, I want a different kind of conversation with this person, right? But then I kind of connected the dots, and I was like, okay, so am I coming across that way?
You were
Am
like,
I
"Oh,
like,
no, that's me," and I think that's kind of
it's me?
annoying. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely part of it, where I was like, all right, I got to find sort of a different mode,
Mhm.
or more than one mode in like my social life, besides trying to be the interesting guy or
So what'd
something
you
like that.
do?
Well, I mean, that that one led me to realize like I wasn't curious or interested in other people, but when I realized the ways that I could be, and this sort of like actionable stuff like active listening or asking an open-ended question, these kinds of things,
Mhm.
I was like, oh wow, this is like, so this is kind of fast forward to many years later when I
Uh-huh.
figured this out. But I was like, this is actually less stressful than trying to be the interesting guy. And it was easier, and it was like this mode of like being receptive and curious and listening to other people that they really liked. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to try to be so interesting for them to like the interaction.
Yeah.
They'll like the interaction if I'm interested in them.
Uh-huh. Like the total opposite way around, but felt good for you and felt good for them when you crack the code on it.
Totally. Totally. Yep. And family was also a thing. I mean, I think family relationships are challenging for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Uh, I have a brother who's younger than me by 12 years, and I, I don't even remember what it was all about, but we were having one of our big arguments. Like this was a while ago. And first, there's a little background on my family. I mean, you noted my passionate, enthusiastic style, and
You come by it
I think
honestly?
that
That's
kind
what you're about to tell me?
of what's that?
I said, "You come by it honestly."
Yeah, yeah. But I also had this kind of like temper, this Italian thing. My dad, I think all of it kind of goes together, and like,
Mhm.
but my dad would sort of like lose his cool in ways that I was like, I never want to be like that, right? I don't want to be getting angry like dad would get angry. And, I think looking back, I only had limited success at that, but I definitely went through a period where I was really trying to maintain this kind of calm exterior. And this fight, so back to this fight I was in with my brother, and he said something like, "Why are you talking like that? Like, you seem like you're angry, but you're just trying really hard to stay calm."
Mm.
And I was like, I don't believe that I'm angry, but I start to feel angry when you tell me that you think I'm angry. And this was kind of like, it was just like almost like slow motion, just watching this exchange happen. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, what if he's right about this? Right. And like, he was very patient with me in this kind of conversation, we sort of unpacked it in real time. And I was like, I guess I was sort of angry and then trying to hide it.
Mm.
And you were sort of picking up on that, right? I just basically wasn't pulling this whole thing off. And like, deep down, I was like, I just want some credit for like not losing my cool, like dad would, you know?
Yeah.
And, and my brother was like, sure, but like, I just want you to like actually own up to how you're feeling rather than pretending something, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
So that was another very notable moment where it was kind of like some way of presenting myself that I had worked very hard at wasn't really even working the way I intended it to. And it was the
Mhm.
same thing, like this kind of emotional leaks or something like that other people could pick up on,
Mhm.
even if I was trying to hide it,
Mhm.
keep it under wraps. Yeah. So my brother played a big role
And
in
so
how I got.
so as you're maturing, you're, like, picking up the dots and these connecting the dots in these different parts of your life. You're getting these signals.
Yes, totally. Yeah. There was a big signal. So I had a good friend, a trusted friend. His name's James. And we did a lot of this transformational work together, meditation and other things. And he said, uh, you know, you can work on this relationships and communication stuff if you want. I found some stuff you might be interested in. And, because he knew I was frustrated, with this whole, dating and intimacy thing and in other ways. And he's like, yeah. I was like, no, why would I do that? Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to try to pretend to be someone else to get people to like me. Like, that would not be cool. That would be manipulative, right? Like
Uh-huh.
people should just like me for who I am,
Mm.
right? They should just like me as is, right? Like, I shouldn't have to. Right? It was sort of weird. I had this block of like I was into personal growth, but not if it had to do with relationships or communication. I was like,
Interesting.
that was just not okay. Yeah, it was
Uh-huh.
kind of funny like, looking back, how much I resisted it when he first suggested it.
I think also there's, like, the time where the era that we grew up in, where there
Mhm,
was, like, a lot of manipulative stuff around sales and breaking things into steps and getting people to do things that I think was very explicit in
mhm,
our kind of, 20s. And,
mhm,
I can see how the, like, not wanting to be like that or, a fear of coming off as that would actually be a thing, like,
mhm.
I can feel that in my own the places where I've had resistance or fear around some of these things too.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Yeah, and it definitely is something people struggle with if they're thinking about getting into something like meta relating or learning
Mhm.
and practicing it. They're like, well, I don't want to become a manipulative person, you know? It's like
Yeah, or isn't
so
somebody
this is
gonna know if I'm following these steps that, like,
sure. Yeah.
that this is gonna be
Yeah.
weird?
Yeah. How am I supposed to be? How can you teach me to be authentic or whatever? Like, it's like, I know what authentic
Porch,
is. And
I
it's like,
love knowing that you had all this resistance and then you created meta relating, which like,
it's kind of hilarious, isn't it?
it's really good because those who don't know meta relating, that it's a very has it's a beautiful set of mechanical pieces. That's one of the most authentic things you will ever experience. I love what you did. I see what you did. Okay, but go on. I don't want to miss the story. So you're in the
So
resistance.
I'm in the resistance, and so James kind of was into this, like learning about this stuff, and I wasn't. But then this thing happened, right? Like there was this woman, and I was interested in her romantically,
Mhm.
and then I found out that another buddy of mine went on a date with her, and this like really made me feel angry, and so angry I didn't really know what to do with it. Like I wanted to stop something. I wanted to stop them, like this from happening. And so I didn't just go for that. I was like, okay, let me talk to my friend James. And so we talked, and he said he would be willing to do a role play with me where he would pretend to be my buddy and I would be like just saying everything, right?
Oh.
So I just let it all out, right? The fear and the anger and my wanting to him to do something different. And James in the role play was just like listening and repeating back what he heard me saying and like really getting it and understanding me. And I could just feel how good it felt to be like heard and like
Mm.
understood. Like, and he wasn't arguing or defending. He was just, and he just kept going, like listening to me in this way until like I really had like nothing left to say. Like everything that I wanted to say, I'm like, yes, that is it. And he says, yeah, I hear you and I get you. And I'm going to date her anyway. And then
Mm.
I was like, I could just suddenly I felt like this contraction, like there's got to be something else I can do. Like I felt like I got to repeat something I just said, explain myself again or something. But like I just didn't. It was like a moment where I could just sort of see the parts of me that were like trying to essentially use my upset or outrage to control my friend.
Mhm.
And then I was like, well, I don't want to be that guy. Right. I don't want to, right. I don't want to be trying to
Mm.
force other people to behave how I want because of my feelings. Right. And at this point, I was like, all right, I no longer have this excuse to like not learn relational things because I'm afraid of being manipulative or something, because
And being
I could
manipulative.
see I was already trying to be manipulative. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's what opened the door for you to step through into getting some new tools.
That was that was huge. That was just a moment like the switch flipped. And if you really knew me, you would know some of my friends said like, Porch, when you get into things, you just go full into things. And I was like, all right. So I just dove in the way that I do
Yep.
into just books, like dating advice, conflict resolution, communication, nonviolent communication. I got into, um, I got a therapist and spent time talking about this with my therapist. I would go to these workshops, meet people who were trying to practice relational communication things. I even got a master's degree in psychology along the way. And yeah, I found that like in these communities of practice where we would be like almost doing laboratory style communicating and relating with each other, like I learned a lot. Like there's a lot of repetition, but there were also like a lot of like people really revealing what was going on. And there's a way in that kind of environment you start to see these patterns. And
Mm.
I would see this pattern in me, or somebody would share about their experience, and I would sort of be like, "Yeah, I kind of do that too. That's interesting."
Mhm.
Right? And
Yeah,
so,
by them revealing what's inside them, you get a deeper understanding of what's inside you in some cases.
yep,
Yep.
totally. So I mean, I just learned a ton of things, like a laundry list of things, and a few of the key ones I want to share here are
Yeah.
like, all right, so sometimes I'm trying to be impressive and interesting to stand out, or sometimes I'm trying to like be friendly and safe, or to like blend in. And if I like let either of those things take me too far, it would become inauthentic. Like if I would take either of those behavior patterns too far, I would not really be true to myself.
Mhm.
I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Um, I had this whole thing where like people should understand that I'm coming from a good place. I'm a good person, or I have good intentions, right? My intention is what is the only thing that should matter, right? But I was not actually curious about the impact I was actually having on other people,
Mhm.
right? Somehow I just thought they should figure out that I had good intentions and then like give me a pass, regardless of how I did or said things. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have to actually be curious about my impact in
Wow.
order for me to be taking my intentions really in a fully responsible way. If
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Mhm. It really makes sense to me because 'cause we've
Cool.
nerded out on this in a lot of different ways, but yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Then sometimes I would like drop hints about things that I would want,
Uh-huh.
hoping that people would figure it out.
I think this is a
And
classic
then like
move. I think a lot of people try this.
a lot of people do. And sometimes it works, and it's fine when it does work. But like I didn't really realize how much I was avoiding asking for what I wanted directly. Like I could look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably just missed out on all kinds of opportunities to have what I wanted because I just didn't ask. And however it was that I was hinting, the person just wasn't even picking up on it,
Mm.
you know? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, this is probably a big part of why I've been disappointed in
Mhm.
relationships, and just not asking for what I wanted.
Mm.
Uh yeah. The other pattern I said earlier was the trying to think of what to say next, right? Even when somebody else was talking, it'd be like, all right, what's the counterpoint, or what's the new interesting thing I'm going to say to like win this argument? And sometimes it would just be like, oh, I just spaced out on what you said. Can you repeat that? You know what I mean?
Good to
or
know.
or I would be like, oh, cool, this is going to be cool when I say this, and I would say it, and they would just be like, I just said that a second ago, and I'd be like, oh, I was trying
You
so
were
hard to
like,
think
"No,
about what to say.
I don't know. I wasn't there. I was
I
doing
didn't,
something
I
else."
didn't hear you. I was thinking, I was coming up with this thing. Yeah, it's kind of hilarious, right?
Mm. And kinda
Another
tender.
one,
It's, like, hilarious and it's tender. 'Cause I don't know, I can
yeah,
feel the innocent version of all of us, or so many things even that I've experienced in other people's interaction. These patterns are so common.
totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think experiencing some amount of, I suppose, like maybe feeling embarrassed or ashamed is part of the process, but then also some amount of like tenderness and compassion for like the
Mhm.
past version of myself that like didn't know any better. A lot of
Yeah,
this is part of the process, just realizing, oh, like, well, just because I did it then doesn't mean I have to keep doing it.
right.
Right. And if I had known better then, maybe I wouldn't have done it, but I didn't. So all I can do is work with what I have now.
Totally.
Yeah. Yep. And one more I want to say too was like I would try to like read people, kind of get into like what are they thinking? Maybe I'm trying to impress them with my ability to read their mind, or maybe I want to use this somehow to my advantage. And some of the times I was on, but like a lot of the times I was off, and
Mhm.
kind of acting on assumptions that I think that I've got somebody figured out can
Mhm.
sometimes lead to embarrassing moments, right?
Mhm.
And
Or like
like
disconnection when what you want is
right,
connection, right? That
totally. Yes, that thing you just said is turns out to be like a common theme throughout all of these things. Like if I sort of look back at what's common to all these patterns, it's like, well, I'm looking for connection, right? I'm looking for cooperation. I'm looking for trust, or I'm looking for intimacy, and underneath all that, it's like, it's just like a yearning for love. Like I want to be
Mhm.
accepted,
Mhm.
and loved and appreciated, want to belong,
Mhm.
and these very sort of tactics or strategies I thought were like such great ideas to get it would often be the thing that would be the thing that's getting in the way,
Mm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm wanting to be impressive, so you'll like me and I'll get connection. But now I didn't even pay attention to what you were just saying, and now I'm embarrassed for like
Yeah.
not listening to you.
Mhm.
Kind of funny.
Mhm.
There's like an irony to the whole
Yes.
enchilada in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're like in this place where you're identifying these
Mhm.
patterns, you're getting these tools, you're going like deep down the rabbit hole. And where do we go from there to meta relating being born?
Well, I got so into it. I'm just like, I'm gonna just like start doing this voluntarily, professionally. I would volunteer at these workshops. I started a new career as a coach after getting my master's in psychology.
Mhm.
I learned to facilitate kind of group processes, communication, these kind of laboratory experiences for
So
people.
your life kind
I
of
eventually,
became like the relational field. There was a way where it was this mystical thing that you didn't even know the relational field existed. And then you just like stepped into the relational field as your full-time playground.
yep, yep, totally full time. Yeah, I even got to the point where I was like training facilitators how to facilitate these processes, and I've helped many people face the very similar challenges. I've sort of, it's almost like I've cataloged the different pitfalls and understood the different corrections for all of these things, and a lot of these things have become part of the foundation of meta relating. And I would say a big central thing is like relational issues, however you want to call them, these miscommunication or conflict, these tension, like whatever these are, they're inevitable. They cannot be avoided. They're actually part of just a natural part of relationships because we're not perfectly identical clones of each other.
Mhm.
Um, However, you can have these happen less severely. You can have them happen less often, right? And when they do happen, you can work through them more easily, more effectively, more quickly. You can learn how to do these things, and given that there are, there's some people out there who, like me, it didn't come naturally, right? It was kind of like you sort of figured stuff out along the way, but maybe only partly, or maybe you sort of like, people or social situations are still really stressful or something like that. And
Mhm.
I just want to say, like, having learned so many of these parts kind of the hard way and having it not come natural, and then having taught people successfully to do it, I realized, like, okay, this can be learned, right? This can be developed, and it can be uncomfortable, but it's, in some ways it's simple, though it's not always easy. Yeah, but it can be learned.
I'm I I'm often surprised when I hear you tell, like, these stories of these struggles because you are so well practiced at the art of relating, and I've known you only the last couple of years, and so I've never known besides through your storytelling or through stories of others that we both know of a younger version of you, um, which is such proof to me that it
Mm.
can be taught, it can be learned because you are so, authentic and graceful with this tool set. And as someone who relationally things have been quite easy for me, like, I
Mhm.
kind of just have the knack of reading and moving and, understanding. I'm s the meta relating was just like because I haven't actually really had to consciously think about how it all works.
Uh-huh.
And to
Uh-huh.
have that tool set has really, A, given me a tremendous amount of uh, insight into how complex our relational field really is, the truth of it, the truth of the matter.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
also given me a tremendous amount of empathy for people that maybe I wouldn't pause to I would just rank them as just not being good at something and kind of, "Ugh, I don't like relating with this person 'cause they're just not good at it."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
now I feel like I
Yeah.
am so my aperture, has widened in my capacity to relate with lots of people in joyous and amazing ways. And one of the other things
Mm.
you've really brought to my attention is we often only think of the relational field when we're in tension.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, that that
Uh-huh.
that it's like when things are tough is when it comes to our attention, what's the relationship between you and I?
Yes.
And when we have the ability to, um, see it and recognize it in other times as well, in the wholeness of our relationship, it makes it just so much better.
Yes. Yeah. Like tending
Yeah,
like attending to it,
exactly.
maintenance of it. Yeah.
And when we have that
Caring for
common
it.
language, when you y and with meta relating, it's okay if the person I'm talking to doesn't know the meta relating playbook. We can still be very successful in our meta relating, but how
Yes.
joyous and fun it is. More and more people in my life are getting involved with meta relating and experiencing it when you have that common language in your with your partner, with your friends. It's
Mhm.
so much more can it's just so much more pleasurable in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when you both kinda know the plays, it can be
Yeah.
way more efficient and fun. Yeah.
This engineering mind of yours, Michael Porcelli,
Mhm.
that I'm just celebrating joyously all of these chapters of your life and how they came together to create this body of work. The the way you have truly broken down, and what did I call it the other day? The dictionary of,
Encyclopedia.
just the amount of what's there so clearly to engage with on so many different levels is truly the body of work is astounding. And I'm so delighted. I now like hearing the whole story of the engineer and the challenges and the going down the rabbit hole and getting your master's degree and the using and refining the tools and putting together the patterns of what relational tensions come up and what our behavioral patterns can be and
Mhm.
what we can do with all of that to again looking at you today and the art
Mhm.
of relating that you so authentically
Mm.
embody uh, is really exciting.
Thank you, Jana. It's
Mhm.
been super fun to share this story with you. Yeah. Appreciate it. Appreciate you.
I can't wait to hear how many other stories in the next few years will reveal themselves from people that get to discover this body of work and transform their relationships in their life.
You and me both.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right. Let's call it there. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. To learn how to experience more of what you want in your relationships, subscribe to our channel. Check out our website at MetaRelating.com. Subscribe to our podcast, Relational Conversations, wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on social media. Check out the links to these and more in the description below. I'm Michael Porcelli with MetaRelating. Until next time.